What's up, guys, and welcome to a brand new episode of the NeoVintage podcast. I'm Jabril, and I'm with
Steve. Hope everyone's doing okay.
And for you guys who have never seen the show before, we're just two guys that like to talk over the biggest stories in gaming, and we always like to start with what we've been playing. So, Steve, tell me what you've been playing.
Some more of the same. Big thing is I completed my first run on Cyberpunk 2077. So I put some hours in and I did get one of the endings because I believe there's 6 or 5 endings. And so I was at the point of no return where they warn you hey, pretty much from here on you won't be able to save anymore and stuff like that. So I created a second save so I can go back and do some side missions and stuff like that and get different endings. But overall, I really enjoyed the game. I really enjoyed what the game was really doing with some of the themes, and some of the story sequences really start to pick up. The game really, especially now with all these updates, the game's starting to finally really work. And I was really excited to do it. Now I'm kind of just waiting on it now until it's just a little bit more stable, a little bit better, so I can really get in and do some of these side missions and maybe start a second character to test out some what it was to be a nomad or a corporal life and stuff like that. So I've wrapped up my time currently with Cyberpunk, which I'm glad, because the game was giving me some headaches, man, to to want to play it. So I've kind of wrapped that up for now. I'll get back to it hopefully when it gets just a little bit more stable and maybe some more updates and maybe that first big patch I think they said for January. Maybe I'll test it out, see what it feels like in there. Just because I know this is not how they want us to experience the game, and I really want to do it justice. So I got my first playthrough. It was pretty exciting. I guess I didn't really get the ending I thought I was kind of heading towards. So you got to be careful, but to avoid spoilers, obviously I'm not going to get too into it. But yeah, decisions are important. So obviously once I wrap that up, I'm like, all right, gotta move on to these other things that have just kind of been sitting on my docket. Still playing a little bit of Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, but I went back to Yakuza Like a Dragon, because obviously I put that aside for Cyberpunk and stuff, and everything we've talked about that game, I'm still absolutely loving it. I can't get enough of that game. It's wild, man. You open the door, here's a bunch of dudes dressed as babies.
I hit that point too.
They're like, here's a side mission. Some guy's peeing into the lake. Go stop him, and
yeah, that's funny.
It's just so wild. I finally got that. I got the fourth party member, which was that woman's twin.
Psycho.
Yeah. So then I can change my party class now and stuff like that. So it's building up. It's finally. I love the game. The gameplay's there, but it was really interesting the way they were doing it. Again, the whole investigation, and so I'm assuming you're that part where you have to investigate what's going on in that senior home, and what's really actually happening there, and just all these small things. I'm like, this is really good writing. I'm super surprised. I'm sometimes these RPGs are a little bloated, and some of the writing's super cheesy. And what's cheesy in this game is kind of supposed to be really cheesy, just because the way, we've talked about it before. Your party's a bum, an ex-cop, an ex-Yakuza, and now this lady. So it's just what a great time. It's really just relaxing to kind of get through, and it's just all these side missions are there if you want them. If not, you really don't need to do them for certain aspects. So I'm having fun with that, just kind of slowly clicking away. I don't know how long that game is. I want to say I'm on chapter 6 now. I don't know how long it is, but I'm in no rush to beat it, because I'm just enjoying my time with all these characters. And then because it was on sale, I was able to get Immortals Phoenix Rising.
Okay. And
man, you did this game justice, because this game is fantastic. I cannot get enough of this game. I want to say I downloaded it because it was Epic Game Store on the PC gave us a free $10 coupon, so I was able to get it for $25, and it was I was like, yeah, why not? And this game is fantastic, so funny. There's times where I actually started laughing because the way Zeus is talking and they're telling the story, and just that aspect, because we've seen so many versions of Greek mythology being so realistic, for them to be just out of nowhere being bored and be oh yeah, and there was 3 Cyclops, and 3 Cyclops just appear, and I'm like, wait, what? I like that the game's not taking its time getting to you. They're like, don't worry, we're going to give you, here are these gauntlets so you can do the magnetic thing. Here's the wings so you can fly, so you can do the running. They're like, here's all this stuff so you can really start to play the game really quickly. Within 3 hours, I had all these items and all these equipment, and it just made me feel great. I was like, okay, this is not something that's going to just drag itself. And it's and I really like it. I had no idea you customized the character. I like when that game loaded up and it's like make your Phoenix. I'm like, what do you guys what? So I was like super excited for that. I'm liking it, and I know it's weird to say, but I'm liking a lot that's in here more than Breath of the Wild, which I know is I know it's iffy, but obviously they took stuff from Breath of the Wild and improved on it. Obviously, if in turn we see Breath of the Wild 2 take some stuff from Phoenix Rising and improve on it, obviously, I mean, that's what's good about the gaming community and development is you get to feed off each other and make things better. Like, if this game was bad, then I would call it a ripoff, but the fact is that it's really inspired by Breath of the Wild, and for all the right reasons, because it's really good. I have not, like, found a really complaint. I'm just chilling. Sometimes I'll put a small podcast and I just start playing it because it's great, just running around, getting the what are the crystals, ambrosias and things like that, because I know that's for leveling up and stuff. Still early. I want to say I'm like just under 5 hours, I want to say, because I just picked it up, but I'm glad I got just to get a small handle on it, because I just that way I feel like my year's complete. I got my hands in everything that I wanted to, and now I know like this game is definitely, I have to put it on my important list to really get to. So that's all I really been playing, dabbling some few things on Switch, Super Meat Boy and all that stuff, but that's all I've been really playing on. So what have you been up to? What have you been playing?
Well, yeah, before I go, I just wanted to say Immortals, the interesting thing is, I would say pretty definitively that's probably the most underrated game of the year.
Oh, for sure.
And the reason was I just feel like it was really poor timing. It got buried, honestly, by it was couched between the console launches and the just giant Cyberpunk fiasco, and it was just couched right there in the middle, and I feel like it just got drowned out a lot, and when it launched, it didn't get enough real praise because there's so many major launch titles going on, and the tail, as people got deeper and deeper into the game, didn't really get to have any airtime because Cyberpunk was just dominating the discussion so much. So unfortunately it got overlooked, but I'm really hoping that Ubisoft, before they launch like Far Cry, for example, maybe can do a little bit of a marketing push come the springtime. I'm hoping for it to really get people onto this, maybe with a major DLC drop or something like that, because this is a fantastic game, and if they could get like maybe the price down a little bit and add some DLC for complete edition, like $40 or something like that during the spring, I think that can really change the trajectory of this game, because content-wise, it could very much stand on its own. But I'm glad that you were able to jump into it and like it so much.
Yeah, I'm in love with it again, and I know this morning I just saw it. It's on sale for Amazon. Whoever's listening, it was on sale on Amazon for $30 on like all the systems right now. So that's a super good steal. And it makes me wonder why we got so much promotion for Watch Dogs Legion.
Exactly.
And, and Ubisoft kind of not rushed, but released these 3 games.
Very close to each other.
Valhalla, Legion, and Immortals just so close together. And I'm like, I would have definitely kicked out Watch Dogs. That definitely could have used some time in the oven.
Absolutely.
And then.
And now that Far Cry's gotten pushed, that absolutely should have been a spring game.
Yeah, and then would have gave us Immortals, because Immortals feels like I haven't heard any issues with it, and I have run into no problems.
Nothing.
That game is great.
Yeah, no, it runs phenomenally. Not a single crash, no dropped frames or anything. It's optimized perfectly for next gen experiences. So as far as what I've been playing, it's been 2 things. One thing way more so than the other, but I just want to mention it. I did finally get Demon Souls. I've dabbled into that, and I am getting absolutely rocked in it, obviously. Like, nobody. I expected that fully. And the funny thing is, I get frustrated with games a lot because I play a lot of games and I hate wasted time. But I never once got mad at a Dark Souls or a Bloodborne, because my mind registers them very much like Castlevania, where if I die, that's on me. They told me exactly what to do, and they give you the patterns. There's not this crazy intuitive AI that changes on you. There's a very fixed pattern, that way things go, and you just need to learn. You just have to grind it out. And so I respect the hell out of these type of games, and I'm having a really, really good time with it. It's just brutal, and so I haven't made a ton of progress on it. I played a couple hours into it. I'm still like very much in the first area, playing over and over that very first area, because I die in a million different ways, and I'm like, how the hell am I still in this area? But I'm figuring it out, and I'm having a really good time with it. And it's I understand what people are saying with in terms of its visuals. Yeah, it's probably the most impressive looking next gen game. Miles is up there too, and Call of Duty obviously is about as good as it gets. But this game is crazy good looking, performs perfectly. It requires some time for me to get used to that control mechanism because again they were very very faithful. So it does play like a PS3 game, but it's a very cleverly designed PS3 game. So I wouldn't say it's like PS3 as in like it's clunky. It's just it has a certain weight to it and a certain rhythm and a certain speed to it. So it's not like this hack and slash. Like going from even a game like a Sekiro to this would be quite the adjustment because this is a very slow, plodding, precise game that you need to have patience. So for somebody who's used like me, who loves walking into somebody and just DMCing things, just going crazy, destroying everything, I am getting like destroyed. And there are enemies here that can easily one-shot you, which I've learned the hard way. So having a great time with this. It was $70, but I used like basically, like you build up points on credit cards and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I was able to use my points for that, so I didn't pay anything out of pocket. So it was almost like the perfect experience where like if I take a couple weeks off to play something else, I don't feel guilty about that or anything like that. I didn't spend really my hard-earned money or anything like that on that. So yeah, that's really, really good experience. I recommend that to anybody who hasn't gotten it just yet. And if you actually look at like in terms of just stats, it's one of the few like core next-gen experiences we actually have. There is no PS4 PC version of this. This is only on PS5. So if you're looking for something to justify getting the PlayStation 5 that you can only experience on there, Demon's Souls is a great option for that. If you're willing to, put in the time and have patience, because as somebody who's very impatient myself, it's teaching me quite a bit.
Yeah.
The other thing that has been taking pretty much all my time is Cyberpunk as well. I also beat it, had a really, really great time with it, and now I'm in full post-game mode, and I'm playing everything the game has to offer. I'm going into right now, so I don't know if I'm necessarily going to go for a 100% completion run, but I don't see what would necessarily keep me from doing that. Because a lot of games, what keeps me from going 100% is the fact that there's always some kind of activity type that just drives me nuts. But Cyberpunk doesn't really have that. The only thing you would bump into is jobs that you might be just not leveled up enough for. You might not have the gear to be able to deal out the amount of damage you have to beat it. So that's just a timing thing. That's something that could be taken care of with just grinding out. So yeah, last night I beat the game. 2 days ago I beat the game, and yesterday I just spent time grinding out all the missions that I haven't done yet. Both story, other ones are like gigs. I was able to buy the most expensive car in the game that they've offered me so far, which is funny. Did you play Street Kid?
Yes.
So that car, this is not a spoiler because it's very early, but when you go to steal that car with Jackie, or Jackie shows up, that's the car I actually bought. So I actually have that car now.
Oh, nice.
And it's just incredible to drive around in that car. So now my next goal is to basically pump a whole bunch of money into my cybernetics. So I basically want to be almost close to a full cybernetic and have the super fancy car. So I'm trying to live it up in that game. But I'm having a great time with it. And the post game, it doesn't seem to have as many performance issues as I bumped to. Because when all was said and done, I had crashed in the game about 9 times. So, because I kept count. And my girlfriend's actually playing it, and she's already experienced probably, I think, like 5 crashes. And she's earlier in the game than I ever was before I hit 5 crashes. So, your mileage may vary on it. And this is the next-gen experience, so I can only imagine for people playing on lesser hardware, if they're even trying, because I'm sure a lot of people just refunded it anyways. But, it's a really, really great experience. I'm super excited to see where this game goes over time, and I'm hoping, obviously, for DLC, but obviously I'm sure that whole timetable is going to be pushed off now that there's so many fixes to do. So it's going to be some time, I'm sure, between the multiplayer and the DLC and stuff like that. But I'm having a great time with it. It definitely clicked for me a lot more, especially post-game. I beat it in about 25 hours-ish, 26. And I'm closer to like 32 now. So I've gotten a number of hours post-game right now. And it's clicked a lot more for me now that I'm filling in a whole bunch of these stories. And just, for me, that's what I love most about Cyberpunk, is I know some people love the story. Some people like being out in the Badlands. Some people love the Arasaka stuff. Some people love just the, down gritty street gang stuff. To me, I like the odds and ends random stories where you just bump into some random NPC going crazy about something, you listen to them speak, and you go on some little tiny mission and killing the cyber psychos going around the town.
Yeah,
like that's what I like to do.
The Cyber Psycho storyline is actually
they're
cool.
nuts.
Yeah.
So that's what I love most about the game is kind of just driving around the city, like marking a little question mark on some corner of the map I haven't really been to yet, going over there, see what's going on, maybe get an NCPD notification like, hey, there's somebody in the area going crazy, and you just, because I beat the game already and I have like insanely high gear because I either messed around with crafting or did a whole bunch of side quest stuff. I have a pistol that does like 740 damage. Like, it's insane. So I'm able to go into Cyber Psychos and maybe kill them in like 5 shots. Like, maybe. Like, and that's like the higher strength ones. So I'm having a really good time with it, and I'm really excited to see what the tail of this game looks like. But I am very, again, empathetic to the people. Probably millions at this point of people who are not really able to experience this game in any real way. So I'm hoping that they are able to fix this in a timely manner so everybody can see how good this game actually is once it's all said and done. Do I think it's like a absolute masterpiece? No. And we'll get into it later where we kind of like place it in our top games of the year list. And that'll contextualize how I actually feel about it a lot more. But I think it's a very solid experience if you're able to get through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And even though I've like put it on a pause for a second, I'm dying to go back into it. Like, every time I'm thinking, I'm like, I kind of, I got the motorcycle that's inspired by like Akira. I have that, so I'm always driving that one. And it's just like, I want to get back into it, and I don't, probably today I will pop it back in just because I really liked being in that world. And there was, like you said, there's so much I still left undone after you complete it. And lucky I have multiple save files to be safe, but you're lucky you can, it's not locking you out of it once you complete it and stuff like that. So it's exciting, and it's a good sign because I still want to play it even though I beat it. I didn't beat it and was like, all right, I want a refund now. I'm like, no, I still want to play. I still want to play. I still want to get some better clothing because my character looks a little wonky. But
mine looked terrible for the longest.
Yeah, until I got the Johnny Silverhand clothing, like, my character was looking wild for the longest.
Yeah, my character now, because I went shopping in the center of the city, it looks like the Hunger Games rich people, if you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
My character looks crazy, but she looks rich, and that's what I wanted. I was like, I want to look like cybernetic money. So I'm having a really good time with it, and I'm just curious to see if I'll be able to 100% this game. So it marks all the quests there, so I'm just going to work through it, go through them, and hopefully be in a point where I'm powerful enough to get through everything. And if I'm able to get through everything, beautiful. And then once the DLC drops, I could probably jump in at that point. But I'm all in on Cyberpunk right now, and I'm put everything else pretty much on pause.
Yeah.
But I guess we could jump into the first story because it's going to be a really, really weird one. So we're going to talk about the Kentucky Fried Console, I guess you could call it. A new console has been announced from KFC, yes, the Kentucky Fried Chicken Company. Despite the joke that many people think this is, the specs are actually pretty impressive once you actually break it down. So it apparently supports 4K resolution, 240 FPS gameplay. The Kentucky Fried Console, I hate that name, it's driving me nuts, makes use of the Cooler Master NC100 chassis, a Core i9 Intel, I don't know what this means, in NUC or NUC 9 Extreme Computer Element. It also includes a swappable GPU slot, so it's modular and can be upgraded. It has a PCIe NVMe SSD and 2 Seagate Barracuda 1TB SSDs for storage. Also, it can literally warm chicken inside of it. It has some degree of VR compatibility. And we don't have a price yet, but judging by these specs, I can't see this being a very cheap thing. These are some pretty impressive PC specs, and it has a chicken warmer, and it's VR compatible, so it can actually support those frame rates. So that's telling me that this is, probably gonna have to be close to 1,000 if I had to guess. But Steve, you put your pre-order in for the Kentucky Fried Console already, right?
Yeah, right. I can't believe this is a real thing, because I remember when they made this joke, I want to say back when the PS5 was revealed or truly announced, KFC was like, we have something to announce too, and they did this. It was a joke then. And it's wild to see that they actually went through with it. They teamed up. Some of these components that they're claiming that's in there is pretty impressive. Most people I know who are, all they do is play on PC, don't even have Intel i9s yet. So it's really interesting to see that. it's obviously more like these aren't going to be just on the shelf. This is obviously going to be a super limited run of things. I just why? My question is why? Did KFC make a console? Why are they making a Lifetime show with Mario Lopez? What is KFC doing? What are they doing?
I have no clue.
But it's funny and it's interesting, but surprisingly, yeah, it's if it does all that they're saying, that's a pretty decent PC, I guess, / air fryer, or not air fryer, sorry, because it's just a warmer for chicken, doesn't cook it. Because then it would explode, obviously. But
the heat generated from that, forget about it. I don't know how they're gonna do a heat.
I don't know how they're gonna do a heat warming without a chicken warmer. I don't understand it. I will obviously look at, someone will get this and do an unboxing and do a whole thing, and my curiosity will be far too strong for me to ignore that. But what an interesting time.
Yeah, it won't be me getting this. It won't be me. But I'm fascinated by it. Again, I guess they're I don't know if they're honestly trying to compete with the PS5 and Xbox, or are they trying to just dip their foot into the PC space? Is this just going to be a super limited run thing just for some marketing, and it's going to be a funny, weird thing that we've seen companies do before, where they partner with some game company and they release something, and fast forward down the line, it's like the most expensive thing in the world to find that version of the console or whatever. So maybe they're doing that, where they're gonna make a run of a couple hundred maybe, and then that'll be the extent of it, and in 20 years everybody's like, oh, the Kentucky Fried Console at $11,000. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, but I have no clue what their end goal is. And we're in a weird age of marketing where these social media teams are battling with each other online, and people are like retweeting them and saying, oh yes, kill them. And I don't know, it's a weird time for these companies. I don't know what's going on. It's just a new age of marketing pretty much, and I think this is the result of just seeing Gen Zers get old enough to be able, and millennials to be able to like work at these companies, and we're just seeing the ramifications of that for both the positive and the negatives, where it's just, I have no clue what's going on anymore. So but best of luck to them. I'm gonna have my eyes on it. I'm curious. Like, I guess we have to have some legitimate conversations about this now. Like, is there gonna be exclusives? I guess. Like, what's the controllers gonna look like?
Once we have a pricing, to have a pretty strong PC to do just VR. Now they're saying VR. We obviously have to assume Oculus, because that's the biggest PC VR.
Oculus compatibility.
My PC could do some of that VR stuff. It would compromise some of the other things. But if again, depending price, if this was cheap enough to just have for doing VR, it, I guess, could have a footing somewhere. But again, how limited are these? You got to assume, these aren't going to be mass produced.
No, there's no way.
Because they know they're not going to sell them all. But yeah, I guess we have to see. We have to kind of keep it in mind now that they're treating it like it's a full thing.
Yeah, this is one of those things that we just need to let some time pass to see their level of commitment to this, and to actually, like, okay, I don't think anyone is fully taking this as like KFC fully jumping into the console PC space. No. This is more so just they partner with some PC part creators, and they're just like, we're gonna put out a little something. It's gonna be some fun PR for maybe our first quarter 2021. Put out a couple hundred of these. They're going to be so sparse and hard to get that people are actually going to be paying probably resale for these consoles, and they're easily going to sell out on these as long as they don't mass produce them. If they put out a couple hundred, people are going to buy that, no doubt about that. And so I think it's a good opportunity for the company, but I just don't know what their level of commitment to this is long term, because it's so hard to tell with these things. I don't even know Google's level of commitment with their service, let alone KFC. Yeah, so exactly. Best of luck to them. I'm gonna keep my eye on it.
Yeah, we'll keep KFC in our eyesights. All right. So moving on to the next story, which is surprising, more Cyberpunk talk, but a little bit more serious, I guess. So New York-based Rosen law firm has filed a class action lawsuit against Cyberpunk 2077's publisher, CD Projekt Red SA, due to its alleged violation of federal security laws. Rosen law firm is filing the class action lawsuit on behalf of purchasers of the securities of CD Projekt SA between January 16, 2020 and December 17, 2020, and is seeking to recover damages for CD Projekt investors under the federal securities law. The lawsuit claims that CD Projekt has made false and or misleading statements and or have failed to disclose that Cyberpunk 2077 was virtually unplayable on the current generation Xbox or PlayStation systems due to an enormous number of bugs. They also claim that CD Projekt would suffer reputational and pecuniary harm, and that its statements about its business operations and prospects were materially false and misleading and or lacked a responsible basis of all relevant times. When the true details entered the market, the lawsuit claims that the investors suffered damages. And that's all one giant quote. So we kind of knew this was coming. We've seen this before with a few games and stuff like that. Especially when I think CD Projekt Red started almost admitting that they purposely hid the base PS4 and base Xbox One footage. For most reviewers, they were given the PC version, even given PC parts, they were gifted, quote unquote, certain aspects to make sure their PC could run the game. And I think most of these guys can speak now, like I think IGN and stuff were given the game on console, they were giving it to like 2 days before a release, where their PC review of the game was up for like a week and stuff like that. So that is obviously all misleading. You're misleading not only the investors, you're misleading the communities. When your investors and your higher ups aren't aware that the game is being shaded, that it's not working on everything the way it's supposed to, you obviously have to know this is coming. Obviously, this is going to go to a bigger legal thing that it probably won't. We'll probably hear the outcome. It's probably be in there for a while because of that. But how'd you react to this? I feel like we all kind of saw this coming, especially the investors. They're going to be pretty mad because the stock dropped like crazy.
Oh yeah, exactly. And we both saw this coming. This was going to happen no matter what, pretty much. With the class action on this level, I probably see some kind of settlement or payout that's going to happen. I doubt they're going to take this to court or anything like that. But again, I'm not a legal scholar or anything like that. I would be curious to see additional to this class action lawsuit. The problem is we've seen many games launch in not great states before, but the problem goes deeper than that. And I mentioned this a little bit last week, that there was an active, not necessarily disinformation, but information suppression campaign going on by CD Projekt Red, where they went to very far extents to shield this information not only from the consumers, but I'm assuming from their shareholders as well, where they were trying to push an idea where the game was in a state on a certain timeline that it wasn't. And once you start doing stuff like that and that level of deception, when you're playing with people's money like that and investors and stuff like that, that's where you're going to bump into issues of like fraud. And where there's going to be lawsuits on that side. So this is going to be one side of the fallout that you're going to see, where this is the average consumer side. But I would imagine that there's going to be some degree of butting heads between upper management and maybe those who funded the operation, the publishers and stuff like that, where if they felt like they were being misled too as well, and they were pumping money into something that they were getting kind of inaccurate views on, that can be a whole different level of problem for CD Projekt Red, because that can really destabilize things in a different way, that a class action will cost them a lot of money. But companies have recovered from class actions before. But if you have like people who funded the operation that felt like they were misled, pushing back, and again, this is all speculative on my side, this is just kind of reading the tea leaves and seeing the general direction where all this is headed. That is a different level of scrutiny and problematic stuff going on for CD Projekt Red that would make me worry about them on an existential level. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting thing. I'm curious to see how this plays out. Again, legal proceedings, there's a lot going on. With class action, we're going to have a lot of people probably joining into this. But chances are you're just going to see like, hey, if you join in on this lawsuit, you're going to give them your information, sign on, you're probably going to get a $10 payout in 3 years or something like that, and that'll probably be the extent of that.
Most likely.
This is obviously horrendous PR for CD Projekt Red, especially for getting funded in the future projects. However, packaged with this story, there was also another story that I didn't include necessarily, but the fact that this game is still selling like millions and millions of units. Yep. So it's not like people are not buying this game anymore. Obviously, I think it would have sold better if people on last gen were able to play the damn thing. But for the most part, it's still moving a decent amount of units. So there is still some kind of financial return to this at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, they could say like, hey, people on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and higher end PCs, though a limited base and not free from issues, are getting essentially a playable experience. So there's some degree of the player base that are being being delivered the product that was promised to them to some extent. It's just the last gen people that are really getting shafted in this. So I'm curious to see what those numbers play out with, like, sales wise. Where does that translate? Where does that settle? Especially when 2020 is finally said and done and we get those full fourth quarter results from it. And it's not even a full quarter because, again, this is December 10th to now, to the 30th. Yeah. So we're talking about a 20-day period in 2020 and then going into Q1. Where does this settle with sales? They obviously moved it down from 30 million units to 25 million units. That's still an astronomical amount. That's still moving a lot more units than some games see in their entire lifetime. That's in the 12-month period. So it doesn't seem like they're too scared about the bad PR hurting its sales necessarily. So that's kind of the weird thing, where if there's one thing we know about the game industry is, as much as we hate things, we don't speak with our wallets, unfortunately, the game industry. So I wish them luck. And I just, again, my heart goes to the devs and my heart goes to the player base of people who put their hard-earned money into this game and weren't able to play the game that they were promised. So.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's the sad thing. It's not that the game was like, had some crazy offensive thing or anything like that. It's literally just that people want to play your game and it doesn't run. Yeah. And I think they said it, like you said, it was like December 20th. I think they put the numbers up where it was like 13 million copies sold, including refunds. So like you were saying, you can only imagine that number was way higher, obviously, but
yeah, but that's 13 million in 10 days with all this nonsense
with
going
refunds. That's what I'm saying. That's with refunds, where I'm sure there's tons of games that never even hit, close to those numbers.
A million.
Yeah, it's usually talking about million. 10 days, 13 million, and that's including what was like 8. Within like 8, there's like tons of them pre-ordered and things like that. So that's factoring in refunds. So
yeah, I mean, there's games that we love and franchises that their franchises haven't hit this amount. That's a real thing. Like Metroid, I think, is only around like somewhere like about 30 million units or something like that. I could be mistaken, but they haven't sold a ton. So
yes, like, I think it was like Spider-Man PS4 hit 25 million last year, and that's at that time that was 2-year-old. It took them 2 years to hit that.
Yeah, so Cyberpunk is selling ridiculous.
Cyberpunk obviously being multi-platform and people speaking for so long. At the end, after all this, and once the game's fixed, hopefully, people are they going to be weary on it. Hopefully there's not too lasting of a issue. They obviously know that, I want to jinx it, but CD Projekt Red will probably never launch a game in this state again. I think no company should. This should be a big, big warning to them that you don't release your game in this state. And you don't lie about it so blatantly, because we're going to hold you to it, especially in the day and age where we all can get on Twitter and start uploading our footage and being like, side-by-side comparisons. It's not just graphical downgrades. It's, this is, it wasn't like the Spider-Man puddle situation that these guys were blowing out of proportion. Like, no, your game doesn't work, and you lied about it. So,
yeah, I mean, we'll see where they land and everything like that. And what I was going to say about that, because I forgot my point for a little bit, but no, I remember it now, is kind of the negative ramification of this kind of modern era of game. And I guess you could call it like patch culture, which is release now, fix later. And for so long, there were literal technical limitations keeping you from doing that. Once you launched a game on, N64, it's out. And you could put the little memory RAM expansion thing and that make it run a little bit better. But once it's out, it's out. That's it. But that's the problem now. Is just we're getting so many games that just come out and like, don't worry, we're gonna do a 40 gig day one patch and then patch it over the next few months. But if you're an early adopter, many times you get screwed and stuff like that. Yep. And I think we really need to get back to normalizing releasing games when they're finished. And to me, that this doesn't fall on the devs. This falls on the publishers, the people financing the operation, the people who launch these marketing campaigns, and who force the hand of these developers to understand the development process and understand that if it needs more time, it needs more time because they are I understand there are financial realities that these companies need to hit, but at the end of the day, there's cultural things that have become extremely toxic over time, which is this idea that they're just, I feel like the devaluing of the player's money is happening, where it's like, oh yeah, it's fine. We understand they paid $60, $70. It's fine. We'll just fix it later down the line. But it's like, for some people, this is like one of 4 games they'll get in a year. And you're telling them that, hey, this game will be playable in the state that it should be in 3 months. Like, come on now. That was never an acceptable thing for decades. And because of technical advancements where things can be patched retroactively, that was just normalized, and we kind of accepted that. It's like, hey, it's fine, they'll fix it after the fact. But it's like, that's something that should have never been normalized in the first place. And just like movies and TV shows, things should be released in a competent state. Same thing with a music album, with exception for one artist, Kanye. When an artist puts out an album, they put it out and it is what it is. It's a done, finished product. And they let it take as much time as it needs to take out. Things still get rushed, but for the most part, things are allowed to come out when they need to come out. And I feel like these publishers need to be in a state where they need to respect the developers' vision a little bit more. And if that means not every single game needs to be a quadruple $250 million dollar affair to ensure that you can deliver things on a timely manner, so be it. Like, not everything needs to be this massive thing. And if you want it to be a massive thing, understand that takes time. And so if you need to push it out, push it out. But this whole culture of just releasing things now and fixing it later is just so disrespectful to the player's dollar. And I just wanted to mention that before we move on.
No, I mean, that's absolutely true. I mean, even if you step away from Cyberpunk, Black Ops Cold War obviously launched in a weird botched state. And
breaking people's consoles, man.
I completely refunded my copy, and to be honest, this is it. I probably will not play Call of Duty. I probably will not play I just, what am I going to play in March? In March, am I going to get Black Ops Cold War? Where usually there's that sweet spot where in a week or two I play my Call of Duty, and that's it. I play the campaign. Sometimes I do some zombies. Rarely I'll jump into a little bit of multiplayer if I have someone going on with it. But then that's it. The thing is, it missed its window, and that's it. I'm not going to be purchasing it. I'm not going to be engaging it. I won't be doing your battle passes now. I won't be doing any of that because.
And that's Activision.
You launched in a bad. You launched in a bad state. So now that's it. I'm not going to play your game anymore for the year.
And if that's shown anything, and we already knew this to be true, man, this generation in many ways was rushed, man. Yeah. People were forcing things out for whatever reason. They just wanted to be done with the PS4, Xbox One generations for many justifiable reasons and not so justifiable reasons. And now, in many ways, we're seeing the price that gets paid for that, which is games that are just not ready for it. Some, like Miles, good to go. Demon Souls, they're running phenomenally. Yakuza, which is, again, it has next-gen upgrades. It's not what I would say a traditional next-gen game. But you got like games like Watch Dogs, Cyberpunk, Call of Duty, these games that you could tell are just not optimized for this hardware because things were rushed out and they figure, it's not a big deal. People pay for it now, fix it later. We'll give them enough. It'll be good enough. But it's like, is it good enough when people's consoles are being damn near bricked? Like, come on now. Stop that. So I guess we can jump into a very exciting loose topic that I've been pretty excited to do for quite a while. So now, as of recording this is the 27th. It's going to go live on the 28th. I'm pretty sure no new games at this point will be coming out in 2020. No. And this was something I was kind of playing. I was like, should we wait until the first week of January to just be safe? But no, it's nothing else that could possibly come out at this point. I'm sure maybe there's an indie game or something like that. But for the most part, 2020 is done. So we've seen everything that came out this year. In my opinion, this was a very, very solid year in gaming, especially considering what's happened in the state of the world right now. You would have thought that things would have shut down. Maybe you'd get some indie titles here and there, maybe some last-minute things. But for the most part, there's been a pretty consistent stream of things. Even through the COVID thing, people have been working from home and stuff like that. And they've delivered some pretty amazing experiences. So I just want to give a shout-out to the game industry for really delivering in very, very problematic circumstances. So shout-out to them because, again, with everybody being home, mental illness being at a high, people being so sick, it's been a really, really rough year for a lot of people. The fact that they were able to deliver a little bit of leisure despite all that, that's an amazing thing. I just want to give them a shout out for that. So we're going to have our definitive end of the year discussion. So the way we can break this down is we can have our top 5. We can have a top 10 if you want to extend it to that. I did have a top 10, but I have my core top 5 as well. We could do some notable mentions, as many as you want. We can have a segment about our biggest disappointment. And then at the end, we can cap off. We always like to do, who do we think won the year, if anybody won the year? And that's usually between the big three, Sony, Nintendo, Xbox. And you could throw Stadia in there if you want. Of course, you could throw Atari VCS. They did drop the console. We could talk about that right after this subject.
I didn't know.
The Atari VCS is out right now. Some people, not everybody has it in their hands, but for the most part, players do have it in their hands. Reviews have come out. From what I understand, it's a pretty barren experience, but some people have some positive things to say about it. We could talk about that next week. But yeah, that is out, so technically you could throw them into the mix. But let's just start with our games of the year.
Yep.
So Steve, I don't know if you did a top 5 or top 10, but what did you choose?
So I did a full 10, but I'll give up my top 5 I'll give them the spotlight.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna go from 5 to my top one. So number 5 on my list was Doom Eternal.
Gotcha.
Which is, it has to be my shooter of the year. It was, what a great time that was playing Doom. It's kind of killed me that I haven't been able to go back to play the DLC and all the, single player stuff that they've added to it. I to be honest, I never touched the multiplayer. I forget that's even there. But when you're going from gameplay to gameplay, the kinetic movement, the craziness of it, the finishing, the finishers, the soundtrack, which was beautiful. I had, what a great time I had the whole time I was playing it. And I do want to go back to it one day. I go back to Doom 20. I used to go back to Doom 2016 once a year, at least for a few missions. So I can't not give Doom Eternal the praise because now I never have to play Doom 2016 again. But what a fantastic time that was. And I truly enjoyed everything about it. So I think, and it's pretty much on a lot of people's list. I've been avoiding people's influence, but when I think about some of the best time I had this year, just the weapons and all that stuff was just fantastic for me in Doom Eternal. Number 4, and this was 4 and 5 were swapping spots a lot, but I didn't want to, but Animal Crossing: New Horizons.
Absolutely.
Obviously, the pandemic definitely helped this game, whether they admit it or not. Everyone's stuck at home, so obviously we want to play a game that puts us on an island away from home. And, this game I've put in over 100 hours in. Last time I checked on my Switch. And I still, play it now. I'll play it now. I'm only really down to once a week. I jump in, clean up some weeds, and check the store and stuff like that. But, it's a game that really helped us go through, I guess what I would say is like the hardcore quarantine when things were legit. You could not do anything.
Yeah, March to June.
Pretty much that March to June, especially my life circumstances that I definitely couldn't go out and even risk anything. But even then, take that aside, the constant updates with it, the constant seasonal updates when it switched from spring to fall, to summer to fall, now it's the winter time and stuff like. Even though I'm playing on a reverse island, it's still great to do all the winter activities. It was great to do I forgot they called Christmas. They called it the toy stuff. The constant updates, free updates, where it's like, come back if you want, and you don't feel missed out if you don't. You're not missing levels. Sure, you're missing exclusive party items and Christmas hats and stuff like that, but it's great, and you got to give it to that's pretty much one of my favorite Animal Crossings. I know a lot of people liked New Leaf and some of the things that are in there. I think New Horizons steps it up a little bit more, and it's polished. It was finished. This was a game that Nintendo delayed twice, I believe, so it was fantastic, and I have to give it to them. It's just that super nice casual game that I'm still playing. It still kept me through the year. Next on it was Final Fantasy VII Remake. The game I keep forgetting came out this year.
Yeah.
It's some reason it's not until I look when I look at the list of what I had to do, a huge list of what I played this year, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I did play Final Fantasy VII, and that was also pretty much peak quarantine time. I want to say within a week I beat Final Fantasy VII. I was doing pretty big chunks of it, and and we've given this a lot of praise. I think we did the full spoiler cast on it. They took a 3 to 4 hour segment of a game, blew it up to 30 hours, but made it feel good. It didn't feel stretched out. It was great to see these characters again, to see the new voices, the new designs. Obviously, all really inspired by it. But what a fantastic game, and what a fantastic way to relive Final Fantasy, where it wasn't just a shot-for-shot remake. It's completely stretched out, characters reworked, missions completely reworked to be the best it could be. And then number 2, and this was a close one as well. So number 2, I had to give it to Spider-Man Miles Morales. I know it was a late contender. I understand it was it was late contender. It's a smaller game, but I think all that worked. I think that's what we needed. I don't think we were, especially amongst in between system launches and stuff like that, we didn't need another 40-hour 25 to 30 hour Spider-Man game. I think this really hit the sweet spot, as its own standalone game, as also preparing us to get Spider-Man 2 or whatever they call the sequel. I mean, Miles was great. We love that representation. It was super cool to finally have, some diversity into some of these games, seeing Miles. They sometimes in certain aspects they forget to show his his Hispanic, his Puerto Rican side, and I think this game hit the nice balance between it, especially with the when he's coming down to the apartment and they have the Christmas thing and they have the dinners and you're seeing the Puerto Rican flags and stuff like that. Also to see his other his reactions with his friends and stuff, where he isn't just like a Peter clone. His friends are a little bit more different, and obviously the spoiler of who his other friend is in the game. Miles Morales was such a great game, and I haven't gone back yet since I beat it to do the platinum, just because I know it's a little time consuming and a little grindy, and I don't want to taint it yet. I just wanted to be it was such a solid, fun experience, and that's when you're playing a game, really, if it's not going to hit you over the head with these new ideas, you want a super fun experience, and that actually rose into my first one, which was honestly the best time I had playing any game this year. I had to give my number one, my top game of 2020, Ghost of Tsushima. I have to. We've praised this game to all ends, where it was a great experience. It was a solid story, but it was the actual game that made you want to keep playing. I wasn't just grinding out stuff just to get to the end of the story. The story was actually kind of a back burner for me. But the fact that they took chances, they out Assassin's Creed technically. They took things that we wanted for a long time, gave it to us. They redefined how it is to do certain game mechanics through the mapping and the way the wind blows. They made this game load super fast. I haven't played it on PS5 yet. I can only imagine that it's literally non-existent loading, because on the PS4s they were super quick.
Yeah, it's insane.
But the mechanics, the combat, the art style, the graphics, the whole world that was in there, between doing haikus on the things and going to the springs and reflecting on different options, like the small options you had that changed your experience, to the options of how you wanted to play. Did you want to play completely sneaky? Did you want to really run into camps and just yell? Do it more honorable? And all these things. It's small decisions that really morphed the game. And that's the thing, is that it was such a good game. Where other games this year were more experiences and small and were just fun to do certain aspects of it and were solid. This was really a game where I was like, I'm still dying to go back into it. And I haven't installed it yet because PS5 has no memory.
Yeah.
So
I maxed mine out too. Yeah.
I've maxed mine. I had to hook up my old hard drive to just do some other stuff on it. But it's just a great game. I just overall, my complaints on it are so minute that I just don't even bother talking about it, because everything about this game is fantastic. So those were my top 5. Those were my top 5 games of 2020.
Yeah, so I also did a top 10. And the way I did mine, kind of going into it, was put what I thought maybe was what are the best games of the year. I put that to the side and I was like, what did I love the most? What did I have the best time with for this top 10? So for anybody who's listening, just keep in mind, this is just us, what we had the best time with. These are our favorite games of the year. There's not some objective list of what we think are the absolute best games of the year, because that could look like a different list. So I guess if we're going to do break it down in chunks of 5. So starting with number 5, I also put Miles Morales in my top 5. Love that game. We've spoke its praises enough. But yeah, just flawless experience front to back. The only complaint is, it's a little bit short. I just wanted more of it. That's all. My number 4, Yakuza, Like a Dragon. I was super impressed by this game. It's one of the better written ones that I've played of all the Yakuza games I've played. This game on paper should not have worked as well as it did, especially with the fact that it completely switched gameplay styles. And it just worked so phenomenally, and it runs really, really great. It looks beautiful. Such an endearing story. Love the environment that they put you in, and so they just did a fantastic experience with this, and I'm just so glad that finally us in America can really experience the Yakuza franchise that's been killing it in Japan for so long. Number 3, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I have spent, dozens of hours into this game at this point, and I've gone back and since played the previous Assassin's Creed games. Mm-hmm. And I just have to say that, like, this is one of the perfect blends of Assassin's Creed that I've ever played, and I think this does such a perfect job of blending what Assassin's Creed is now and what it has become and what it was so loved for at one point. And so I think it does a perfect job of blending all these things, and it has a perfect return to stealth in that way. It has a very grounded feel in a way that maybe Odyssey fell apart from. It's a little bit more judicious with its offerings as opposed to Odyssey that just has this insanely large world with so many different small things to do that it can feel super grindy, where they took that away in Valhalla. And it's like, if you would like a more grindy experience, you can absolutely have that. There's so much to do out there, but for the most part, it's a little bit more linear than its previous 2 games, Origins and Odyssey. And it's just one of the better Assassin's Creed games, I think, to have come out in a very, very long time. And I think it's a nice palate cleanser to see where it could go, where it doesn't necessarily have to abandon all that it's built for it to offer something new. And I felt like, especially once you got to the point with Odyssey, which I love that game, I felt like they needed to almost purge what Assassin's Creed was for so long to really offer something brand new. And I felt like Valhalla struck that balance where it's like, okay, how do we take all the lore that we spent so much time building, this incredible universe that we've made at this point, but also not feel like we're retreading old ground. So just wanted to give Valhalla a shout out there. Is it perfect? No, but I think it does so much right that it had to make it to my top 5. Number 2, Final Fantasy VII Remake. We've done a whole spoiler cast on this, so y'all know how much I love this game. Again, not perfect, but I think it was perfect for me. For what I was looking for it to be, I think they did a phenomenal job. And the fact that they're only adapting the Midgar section, I think they did a damn good job at that. And number 1, obviously, I agree with you completely, Ghost of Tsushima. Again, top to bottom, flawless experience, especially I've dabbled with it on PS5, and they just made it even better. It's just somehow even more beautiful. It runs even better, and even with its online expansion, I think it's called like Legends or something like that, I dabbled in, that is just an incredible offering for a completely free experience. So yeah, Ghost of Tsushima for me, an easy number 1 for me. So I guess we could do 6 through 10s now.
Yeah, I'll run through my 6 through 10. So 6 was Yakuza Like a Dragon. Again, it's a game I wish I got way sooner. I tried to, but for some reason Amazon just wasn't working with me, and for some reason I didn't want to get it digital. Fantastic game. I'm loving everything about it. We just talked about it. The characters, the story, the writing, super solid. 7, I had to give it to Crash Bandicoot 4. It was caught really by surprise how much I like this game. I liked it so much that it's installed on my PS5. Though I lost my save in the flip-flop between PS4 and PS5.
Oh, did you?
For some reason, yeah. But, it's not that bad. So I'm running through it really quick to try to catch up to where I was. Especially since I can't platinum this game. So I'm just kind of running. Tough, man. Yeah, so I'm running through it. 8 was Immortals Phoenix Rising because this game is fantastic. I had to put it back on. Once I put the little time I did, I was like, I already could see. I know this game cannot fall apart to the point where I would lose it. Number 9 is where I put Assassin's Creed Valhalla, just because I know it'd be hit higher on my list if I put more time into it. But from what I know, being a more classic Assassin's Creed fan and enjoying what they did with a little bit of Origins and mainly Odyssey, they really did hit the right balance. And I think now they know we're enough to hit, and I'm not the only one who feels that way. Apparently, it's got a lot of classic fans back, especially that. The assassins are actually in the game, is a big plus, and different items like that. So it's great, and that's a game I haven't gone back to just because I know how big that game is. And Cyberpunk obviously put a hold. I didn't think I was gonna fall in love with Yakuza the way I did. So obviously Valhalla, I can't wait to get back into it, and it's just really great to excited to have Assassin's Creed back. And number 10 for me, and I know it's kind of a mixed bag, but Resident Evil 3 remake. I had. In a year where games were not releasing in the most completed versions and stuff like that, this game worked. The game was solid. It was a fun experience. some of its gripes, though it being a little bit way shorter than what like 2 was, it also didn't have that constant, you need to replay it 3 times to get the full story and stuff like that. I do believe this definitely should have been a smaller title. I had snagged it for $40 at launch, so I was less jaded by that. But, the characters are really great. I do like that they rewrote some of the stuff to make it a little bit more canon, because the original 3 had different endings if, like, Carlos lived, died, whatever, and all that stuff. I just really do enjoy it. I want to replay it again. I think it's installed on my PS4, which I have hooked up elsewhere now, so I can play it again. But it's just, I really enjoy Resident Evil. I'm a huge Capcom fan. And the fact that we got more Resident Evil, especially before we get Resident Evil 8, we got more of that classic stuff. And obviously, when you beat Resident Evil 2, we all kind of felt that they have to remake 3 now, because it was so lost and so botched. But, the game looks really great. The RE engine looks fantastic and stuff. So and it's just the game, I beat it in one weekend, but I had fun the whole time doing it. Some of the, the hospital scene in the final boss is a little annoying, but it was an enjoyable time for me. So those were my 6 through 10, which were all great games, in my opinion.
Gotcha. So my number 6 that's where I'll put Animal Crossing. 7 would be Hades for me. Got easily broke into the top 10. Didn't necessarily crack my top 5 because this was just such a powerhouse year, but had to show it some love. Number 8, this is where I put Cyberpunk for me. Again, now just having beat it. Before I had beat it and maybe around like the 15-hour mark, this wouldn't have reached my top 10. But once I got into that real late game stuff and things really clicked, I had kind of finished my romance with Judy, and that had a really, really endearing storyline. I went a little deeper with Pan Am, and I just saw a little bit where the story went, and again, to avoid spoilers and stuff like that. Things really clicked for me in a real good way, and now it's finally clicked on a gameplay style, so that it's easily cracked my top 10, but not my top 5. So yeah, number 8 is Cyberpunk. Number 9, had to show love to this game, Bloodstained: Curse of the Moon 2. And in an era where things are getting bigger and bigger budget and over the top and crazy voice acting and crazy side quest, the fact that I believe Yacht Club does this one. Oh, was it Yacht Club? Or no, who did this game? But
Curse of the Moon?
Yeah, Curse of the Moon 2.
Oh, it's Indie Creates, no?
Yes, Indie Creates. Sorry, I messed up their name. So yeah, in an era where we're just getting bigger and bigger and more robust games and over the top and crazy cutscenes, the fact that a studio can go in and so perfectly capture that NES spirit that I have so much love for, the fact that they can make effectively a new Castlevania game in the style of the original trilogy that I love so much at such a high quality and so faithful, shows me that they truly understand it. And I know to some people, me putting a small game like this on my top 10 is insane, but you have to contextualize things and put things in kind of like context of what they were trying to do. Did they achieve what they were trying to do? And I think for what they were trying to do, they achieved this at such a high level that very few games even ever hit. Yep. So yeah, had to give love to them. And then number 10 is going to be an unexpected one, Mafia Definitive Edition.
Okay, yeah. Yep.
This was a game I was super, super excited for, did not know what to expect, and was blown away by the level of quality that they put. And I felt like it went super under the radar, understandably so. Again, as an open world game, it does not do anything different at all. But I am an absolute sucker for just mafia and mob related media in general. This is a trilogy that I love so much, and the first one I've kind of, not that I actively avoided to, it's just a very, very clunky old experience, the original Mafia 1 on PS2, and so I've messed around with it a little bit when I got it as a kid, but especially back then, as compared to like a GTA and stuff like that, I was like, nah, I don't want no parts of this. So being able to see this game shine in such a beautiful manner, and it's just a gorgeous looking game, I was just so pleasantly surprised to see them put this level of care into it. And finally, I feel like you have a fully realized Mafia trilogy that you can play front to back, that is functional and beautiful looking and tells this story, as opposed to these two really, really awesome polished games and then one that is so old that it's really hard to return to. So that's evened things out in a real really, really solid way. And so yeah, that's my 1 through 10, and I did put together a whole bunch of notable mentions. Did you?
I did. I did. I think I have 7. Let me look at my list. Yeah, I got like 7 honorable mentions.
Okay, so I'll just breeze through mine real quick. These are games that I really, really liked this year, but didn't break my top 10 for whatever reason. First one, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2. Great recreation. Had a lot of fun with it. Classic arcade experience. Saints Row Remastered. Had to show some love to that. I had to double check whether that even came out this year, and I remembered, it did.
It did.
Doom Eternal would fall into my notable mentions. Again, I really, really like this game. I wasn't able to beat it. There are things that I prefer about the original, but again, this new era of Doom is just so phenomenal that I had to show love to it. Immortals Phoenix Rising did such a fantastic job. A tad puzzly for my taste, I'll admit, being completely honest, especially once I got deeper and deeper into the game. I feel like the puzzles get more and more challenging, and I'm just not a puzzle guy, so that's where it probably differed a little bit from my personal taste, but I think they did a phenomenal job, and again, Ubisoft knocked out of the park with this, and probably the most underrated game of the year for me. Paper Mario this year. Again, Nintendo only had like 2 major offerings, unless you want to count like the Mario 3D collection. But in terms of brand new games, it was Animal Crossing, it was Paper Mario. And Paper Mario was the more low-key summer experience that not a lot of people paid a lot of attention to, but I think they did some really, really amazing gameplay things. It ran perfect, it looked beautiful, and the writing was some of the more creative things that I've ever seen from Nintendo. And it was, again, another super underrated experience that not enough people, I feel like, paid enough attention to. DMC 5 Special Edition. Again, this is a special edition of an existing game, so I didn't feel comfortable necessarily putting it in my top 10. But I had to do a shout out to this game runs flawless, has such an incredible story, and to me, this is the experience that it was meant to have, and I'm so glad that it was able to have this next-gen upgrade that was such a high-quality experience, and Virgil is just such an amazing addition to the game. And then the last one for me is Among Us. I just got to give Innersloth, this small team, so much credit for what they were able to deliver, and now that it's on Switch, console experience, forget about it, it's time, it's go time, boys. But yeah, Among Us, such a fun experience, and not enough to crack my top 10 because I just played a lot of other games way more than it. But I have had a lot of fun, and I'd be remiss to act like I didn't. So, yeah, those are my notable mentions for 2020.
Solid list. And I enjoy all obviously, my honorable mentions would probably include everything you put on there, but then I'd have like 15 honorable mentions. Yeah. But so 7, I did put Among Us, just because that game took things by storm. It made me, when I was watching YouTuber play it, different YouTubers play it, I'm like, I want to play this. And I've, again, still not great at the level naming and medbay and all that kind of nonsense, but the fact is I keep wanting to play it. Obviously, when you have a solid crew, it's a fun game, and you gotta get, again, a team of, I think it was 3, now they're 4, or however it was. Congratulations to them that this game just took it by storm, 2 years after release or something like that. I mean, it's just a great game, to get people, to feel like they're playing together again in a time where we can't even see each other. It's a great time. 6, I did put Mafia Definitive Edition, and I put /2 because though 2 launched, the definitive edition of 2 launched all weird and glitchy and stuff, but the fact that this was some of my first reintroduction to this series, and I've dabbled on and off throughout the years, and the first one I cannot even recall when I even played it, if I played it, or I just saw people play it. I don't even know what it was, but now the fact that it's all in there, and the fact that I was reintroduced to the idea that these 3 games are solid connected, they're not just one-offs, the connection between 1 and 2 and then 2 and 3 is just fantastic, and what a great experience. And those are just, I'm glad that Mafia's back. I think this is obvious. That means they're making Mafia 4. Absolutely. Or a reboot or whatever they decide to do. So it's exciting. 5, I had put Astro's Playroom on PlayStation 5 because I absolutely love that. I think what a big celebration of PlayStation history in a world where we can't get like a PlayStation Smash Brothers. At least we have something that's different and one free, but also really exciting to show off the new tech. Also just to show off the PlayStation history. I platinumed that game, so I got all the puzzle pieces, and to see all the hardware to things where it's like the PSP camera and all that kind of stuff was really exciting. I had next was Tell Me Why. Don't Nods, Tell Me Why. Yeah. because this, it's a solid game, and these kind of choice decision games, for anyone who doesn't know, it's Life is Strange, but not produced by Square Enix, so the title couldn't be called Life is Strange. But it's a smaller, choice-based game like those games. It plays with themes that I'm not familiar with, so it's things that's caught me a little bit off guard and made me research to see understanding of different themes and different meanings and reasons and people's choices and stuff like that, and what certain things mean for certain people. It's like opened my mind to different things, and it's also just, I usually play these games with my wife, so it's the choice basis. She usually does more of the choicing, and I just kind of do all the anonymous stuff, putting gas cans and stuff in. That is those games. 3, Destroy All Humans remake, the remake of Destroy All Humans. I absolutely love this game. I love this franchise, and the fact that they were able to reboot it. THQ Nordics on this weird reboot thing. And I absolutely thought this series is a series that should have come back, and they kind of lost a handle on it later on. So I'm glad that they kind of remade it. It looks great. It plays great. I absolutely love it. I'm like 2 trophies away from platinum it, so I haven't deleted it off my PS4. But, the fact that they were able to keep all the original voicing and recreate this just nostalgic game, that just plays really nice. It was really great. And I had I think I beat the whole game in like a weekend. It was also after I had a car accident, so I couldn't drive anywhere. But it is what it is. Yeah. So my last 2 honorable mentions, Persona 5 Royal. I couldn't give this a spot just because it is technically a re-release. A majority of this game is something that we played a couple years ago, but the additions were nice and fun enough where it feels really good to go back to Persona 5 in this way. The small cleaning up of just some nice little things that needed to be fixed is really good. It just makes the game a little bit better, a little bit more noticeable to play, a little bit easier to play for certain aspects. A lot of this, not everything was fixed, but just some of these daily little fixes that just make the game a little bit more enjoyable. So they were able to fix that. And my last honorable mention, I had to give it to The Last of Us Part 2. Just because of the experience it was to play that game. On a graphical level, on a mechanical level, the gameplay and everything like that. The voice acting was super solid and things like that, and the soundtrack is really nice. Now, again, I don't believe it should have gotten all these awards and stuff like that. I'm not saying it's a bad game at all. The story definitely is not where I think it could have been. I think there's ways you can tell this exact story in a different aspect. Even some simple fixes of maybe not doing one chunk Ellie, one chunk Abby. I think if you would have even alternated the days would have helped telling the story. I think if you would have reversed some of the timeline that happened. But I have to give that this game was something I dove hours into. It was something that I was really excited to play. Even besides the leaks, it was exciting to really get through it. It was exciting to be in this world again. Sure, I would have loved it that maybe it didn't connect at all to The Last of Us 1, but it was exciting to be back in there to see what Joel and Ellie were up to. Obviously, one character's around more than the other, and you had to, accept Abby as who she is and what she's doing. But as a whole, the game was still, I have to mention it, where it's like, this is going to be a pinnacle of like certain gaming of Naughty Dog. I do hope this is where The Last of Us ends. I don't want any more Last of Us. But I had to give it because the fact that I enjoyed most of my time with it. Literally, the story was my big issue. But I had to give it to them because it was just a great time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I guess we could jump into our next segment, which is biggest disappointment of this year. Now, one of them is probably pretty predictable to anybody who's paid attention to gaming, especially in those last few months, for me. But another one I did want to talk a little bit about, which was Watch Dogs Legion for me. So the Watch Dogs franchise has always been kind of an awkward one. It kind of started off on interesting footing where some people were really excited for it, some people weren't really buying it. There was that whole thing about like downgrading the graphics from like next gen to current gen and how's this game actually going to look, and some people weren't resonating with it. But then I felt like they really got a lot of traction during 2. They changed the environment. They changed the general aesthetic. They went for something more fun. And people really, really seemed to like Watch Dogs 2. Even though I felt like it did go a little bit underplayed. It didn't perform probably as well as they wanted to. And then fast forward for 3, you can obviously tell they put a ton of money into this game. In terms of the marketing and stuff like that. They had ads all over the place. They had the whole Stormzy collab thing, and it was a big thing. They were moving to London, and then fast forward to playing this game, and I mean, it was just a dud, top to bottom dud, stinker. No thanks. But yeah, and I really did try to like this game, but there was just zero remarkable about it. The quests were just uninteresting. I didn't find the story to be that uninteresting. It obviously had some ridiculous performance issues in terms of its saving systems that were so easily avoidable, but they made some boneheaded decisions in that regard. And so I felt like they really dropped the ball when this was something that I actually was kind of anticipating. I felt like this was the chance for Watch Dogs to finally make that jump into a well-established franchise that is well-loved and well-respected. And I feel like they just dropped the ball. And with Assassin's Creed being at this point a very veteran franchise, at this point, Immortals being too early, and then Ubisoft has a whole bunch of like persistent online type stuff. This, I felt like Watch Dogs was going to be the chance for them to do a newer open world experience to kind of counteract and be the kind of new direction for Ubisoft. Now that Far Cry and Assassin's Creed have been around for some time and they have their fan bases, this could be the new thing. And they fumbled the bag so early on. This is only the 3rd entry, and I felt like 2 out of the 3 are questionable. 1 I think is a definite stinker, which is this one. First one has some redeeming qualities. Yeah. Two I think is actually quite good, but they're fumbling the bag, man. And so that was personally one of my biggest disappointments. But the obvious next one would be Cyberpunk, but we've spoken that to all hell. But y'all know how much I was excited about this game. This was my most anticipated game, and I do love the game ultimately, but I felt like they did drop the ball in ways that I did not expect whatsoever. I would have never guessed that this would have had the performance issues that it has, at the extent that it has, and I fully anticipated Cyberpunk to easily be my number 1 or number 2 this year between this and Ghost. And the fact that I couldn't at most comfortably put this at number 8 on my top 10 has to put it in my biggest disappointment, because again, I did not expect this result at all. So yeah, those are my personal biggest disappointments. Did you have any?
Yeah, so my number 1 this biggest disappointment was The Last of Us 2 story direction. True. Which I know we've already mentioned a few times, and I don't think we ever got into a big discussion, but the fact is a lot of the story choices were very weird, very out of character for the in-game characters, but it was also out of character for like Neil Druckmann and this team of writers. And that can go on all day. And it's not necessarily the themes and stuff like that. It's just the way the storyline was plotted out. It was the way some of these decisions were made that just felt out of character for me. So number 2, this biggest disappointment, Cyberpunk 2077's launch. That game itself was really great. I was opposite, where I had no expectations and thought, I don't know. I didn't really know trailers. I didn't know what the game was. I didn't learn that your character was named V until like the day before the game came out, and that you created your character and stuff like that. But the game blew me away in so many ways, except that it didn't let me play it. I was like, this game is fantastic. Everything about it was love. This game honestly was shot up on my list, knocking out most of these games if it worked. If it came out in a super solid state, it would have blown up my list like crazy. But it was unfortunate and disappointing that the game came out in such a state where, I still have tons of screenshots and video clips recorded that the game doesn't want to run. Doesn't want to let me play it, unfortunately. 3 on my disappointment was actually the lack of Nintendo. And it's interesting. It's more of the lack of Nintendo games. They only released Animal Crossing, and then we got Paper Mario. Sure, they did 3D All-Stars, but that was a big disappointment in my opinion as well. The fact that they just kind of dipped out this year, they were like, well, here's Animal Crossing, and then nothing. And then 2 months or a month before Paper Mario releases, they're like, oh, here's a new Paper Mario game. And then that was it. There was nothing else about the game. They didn't really do some sort of small direct to hype you up for the game. Same with the 35th, and they hid the 3D All-Stars really in the 35th anniversary celebration with all these. That's cute that you're selling pins and you're selling, kids overalls with Mario and Yoshi on them, but you have to. They know that a majority of their fans, the fans with buying power, want some of this stuff. And 3D All Stars was so thrown together that it was really disappointing. So it was disappointing to see Nintendo kind of just not around this year. Sure, they had Smash Brothers on the back burner every couple months, but I don't even give that to Nintendo. I give that to Sakurai, just cranking this stuff out. But Nintendo just wasn't around. Where were they? Where are their games? If 2021 comes and there's like 1-2 games, where is it? Why are these games kind of missing in action? You're giving us Pikmin 3. You're still giving us Wii U games, and that's fine. And that's fine as in between big titles, but. Pikmin 3 was this year. I think we're getting that 3D Mario. I always get the names confused. Land or World with Bowser.
Like February, yeah.
In February. So, but it's just like, where are the games? What's going on with Metroid Prime? Well, Metroid period. But on top of that, Metroid Prime 4, Bayonetta 3 is MIA. They just been kind of quiet.
Disappeared, yeah.
Where are these teams working on? How come there's no Donkey Kong game? How come we're never getting an F-Zero game, but where is all the substance? What is it? We also got Hyrule Warriors, but again, that was not a full-on title. That is a Muso game. It's just really was just a lack of like that standout game. Like, I think if they had like one super solid fall game, I would have been really excited for Nintendo, because they would have had a nice 3. I'm not saying we need one every month, but you had March in the beginning. You had Animal Crossing in the beginning, Paper Mario as this summer title. I think you needed a nice big fall game. I don't know what it would have been, but I was just really disappointed that just they weren't around. Like, my Switch.
Yeah, it seems like Hyrule was supposed to be that for them.
That game is. Don't get me wrong. I like Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity, but it's no Breath of the Wild 2. Again, I would have been super. We'll see next year, because I think next year gives. I think next year, 2021, makes like Zelda's 35th anniversary or something like that. So maybe we're getting some collections and stuff like that. But I think they were my biggest disappointment. Just, there was nothing from them. Like, everything I played on my Switch was either old or repackaged or small indie games.
Yeah, and Nintendo 2020 was one of the more peculiar years for them, because they're in this weird middle zone where, I guess they didn't technically fully take the year off, but in terms of its pace of output, is substantially lower than a lot of the previous years, especially during the Switch era. 2017, 2018 was absolutely nuts. 2019 slowed things down a little bit, but absolutely had some hits. But 2020 has had a slower output of things compared to previous years. And it's one of those weird things where not only was it slow, but then they don't necessarily have not a track record, but a timeline going forward of heavy hitters to anticipate either. They're in a weird zone where I'm assuming they're just keeping everything close to the chest, and things just come when they come. Paper Mario wasn't announced until maybe like a month and a half beforehand, so we don't get a lot of lead time this time. And I would imagine that's to kind of, especially during the COVID era, counteract the whole inevitable delay thing, where they don't want to throw dates out there and have to renege on that once it gets a little bit closer. So yeah, Nintendo was an interesting thing where I could see some people, if you really love Animal Crossing, Paper Mario, and Hyrule Warriors, this was a great year for you. But if any of those three didn't really resonate with you too much, or if they just didn't move the dial for you too much, then yeah, there wasn't too much for you. That's an entire third of Nintendo's offerings for this year kind of gone for you. So yeah, Nintendo was a strange property this year, and I guess there's a great segue into our last subject, which is if we have to choose a company, who won this year. And in reality, I think, from as far as I'm concerned, Sony won this year. But it's a weird thing where Sony kind of won unopposed. I don't feel like there was a ton of pushback this year as opposed to previous years, where like in 2017 there was a fight, in 2018 there was a fight for who ran this year, where Microsoft, with exception for launching a new console, was completely MIA, with Halo being gone, no new Forza, Gears Tactics I guess, but for the most part they were completely gone out of really competing this year. Nintendo had some decent offerings, but for me, hey, Last of Us is not my thing, but Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima, Final Fantasy VII Remake being an exclusive, and then capping the year off with Miles Morales and Astrobot, and Demon Souls also being an exclusive, is just next level compared to Animal Crossing and Paper Mario and Hyrule Warriors. You know what I mean? So for me, it's Sony by a long shot, but not necessarily just because of the quality, but also because they went pretty much unopposed. Nobody really came up to the bat to compete with them. So what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree. When I look at the big three, because obviously Stadia was not around. Come on.
Not Stadia, please.
But when I look at the big three, I was like, well, Sony had one, but also no one was putting up a fight. Nintendo did, the beginning of the year, we didn't know. Nintendo looked like they had everything on. We knew Animal Crossing, and we were like, well, they can do it in a direct in, April, May to line out the rest of the year. We never got that stuff. So, but Sony really just came out of the, top, peak pandemic. Switches and PS4s were selling like crazy. Xboxes weren't. And again, Xbox was laying the groundwork for their launch. And that's obvious. So they weren't in there, again, they didn't have Forza, they didn't have, Gears. I know they just released the Gears 5 story add-on or something like that.
Yeah,
but that
version thing.
Yeah, it wasn't there, and Gears Tactics is very not. It wasn't going to break records because of the kind of game it is. So yeah, Sony did win but Sony was fighting like they were fighting like three other guys, and they weren't. They were in the clear. The Last of Us is, despite what you think of it, is a masterpiece as a complete game. Obviously story wise and stuff like that, it's a different thing, but it was super solid. Ghost of Tsushima was fantastic. Final Fantasy VII Remake. We're gonna be excited for the part 2, and Xbox will just be getting part 1, I think, this spring. So it's so weird, but like you're saying, they outdid Xbox. They even outdid Nintendo, in my opinion. Astrobot and Sackboy's A Big Adventure
I forgot about Sackboy.
Was a completely better game than Paper Mario, in my opinion. I know they're different games, but it was a completely better experience. I'm having way more fun with those than I did with Paper Mario. So it's true that they won by a landslide, but they also, their opponents were down for the count. It was almost ridiculous and almost a little unfair. When I was looking at it, I'm like, wow, Sony went super hard, even though their opponents were miles behind them. Xbox, again, was focusing all on launching the Series X and S, and then Nintendo was kind of just dabbling out these smaller titles to keep themselves afloat. And Sony's just on top, cigar in the mouth, going nuts with all these crazy titles. So, definitively, yes, I don't think anyone can really complain that Sony didn't win. But I do see the little asterisk. It's easy to win when you're the only one in the race.
Well, yeah, and I think Sony's timeline just worked out so well for them. And I don't necessarily know how they got into this rhythm, but I feel like they have their teams perfectly displaced to launch when other teams are not launching. So there's a constant stream. And other companies have tried to do this, and it's not an easy thing to do. So, when Sony Santa Monica is going, Naughty Dog is working, but then Naughty Dog comes, and there goes Sucker Punch, and then by that point comes full circle. There comes Sony Santa Monica. There, Bend is going to come back at some point, and so certain teams are working when other ones are launching, and that's what you want. That's what when you build this body. But unfortunately for specifically Microsoft, is they're trying to build that infrastructure, but the rhythm hasn't started yet. And so they were entirely reliant on pretty much a single game to compete with 2020. And the moment that one game got bumped, because things get bumped, it happens. But when that one thing got bumped, there's nothing they have to offer from the first party, or nothing really to compete with. And unfortunate, but it does alley-oop everybody to be able to compete with in 2021, because obviously Sony is coming back with Horizon Forbidden Wilds, or whatever it's called, and they're gonna have God of War Ragnarok
tentatively
2021. That's what they're saying. We'll see. I'll believe it when I see it. That one I wouldn't be surprised being getting bumped to 2022, but we'll see. And then that means Microsoft will be back with Halo. They'll also be offering Hellblade, and we'll see if what's their name? Obsidian? Yeah, Obsidian is ready to go. By that point, they might have something to offer as well. So there's not even possible. It's very likely that Microsoft will be able to compete in a thorough way next year. Mm-hmm. And Nintendo is so hard to predict. I'm not going to even render judgment. I don't know what's on the horizon. You would imagine another. They have technically yearly Zeldas, and this was an off year with Hyrule Warriors. So you would imagine Breath of the Wild would launch next year. We'll see if they're able to double up again like 2017 and give us the Zelda Mario combo. That changes this, and now 2021 is a year.
Yeah, 2021 is going to be a fight.
If they give us like an Odyssey 2-ish type situation and a Breath of the Wild 2 to repeat 2017, oh yeah, now we're talking. So yeah, 2020 was an off year for everybody pretty much but Nintendo. I mean, sorry, Sony. But yeah, they won this year, but it does make me more excited because yeah, Sony's able to output pretty much every single year, but that puts the rest of the companies in a position to really, really compete. None of them really will be able to match the output pretty much of VCS, but no. Next episode, we're gonna give a subject. We're gonna actually discuss the VCS.
I'm gonna check out some videos now that some people have it in hand.
Yeah, because I'm not gonna just continually slander them and not give them a chance to talk about the actual merits of the console. Mm-hmm. Even though at this point it's really just a meme for me saying that it's a scam because I do think they scam their Kickstarters. But that's a different discussion for a different day. So watch the next episode if you want to hear us talk about the VCS for the 4 people who know it exists.
Oh, man.
But yeah, our end of the year discussion. This was our first year in operation here at NeoVintage, but we're technically we haven't hit the year mark yet. That's going to be in February, I believe. So we can do a 1 year breakdown for how this year has been for us. It's been a turbulent year to launch for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we started recording in the same room to then the pandemic hitting. Well, even like before the pandemic really even hit, you got a little cold. Then the pandemic hit.
I got something.
And then we worked with it.
Yeah, it's been a wild year, and I mean, who knows what the future for this channel is going to look like, but I'm excited to see. And so, that was 2020 for us, and I hope you guys enjoyed this year as much as we did. Great game year for us. I had a lot of fun playing different stuff, and it makes me excited to see what this next gen looks like for us in 2021 now that the consoles have been out for a little bit and we get to spend some time with it. So that was the NeoVintage podcast. We drop every single Sunday or Monday. Actually, we go live. We record on Sundays now. So keep your eyes out for that to see future episodes for us. We drop weekly. So this is Jabrel, and I am with
Steve. Hope you guys had a good holiday and Happy New Year.
Yeah, man, this is the NeoVintage podcast. See you guys.